Let me ask you something. When was the last time you asked for what you actually deserve and didn't immediately feel guilty about it? I'm guessing it wasn't recently. Here's what I know after 25 years of HR leadership and working with hundreds of Black women in corporate spaces. Negotiation is where systemic inequality meets your paycheck. It's not just about the money, though let's be honest, the money matters. It's about how organizations have systematically undervalued our contributions while simultaneously penalizing us for having the audacity to advocate for ourselves. Think about this. Research shows Black women face a unique paradox in negotiations. If we're assertive about our worth, we're labeled as difficult or not a team player. If we're accommodating, we get passed over. We're fighting against pay gaps, advancement ceilings, and the constant question of whether we're truly qualified for the roles we're already excelling in. And somehow, we're expected to navigate all of this with grace and a smile. But here's what I want you to know today. Negotiation isn't about being aggressive. It's about being strategic. It's about understanding that every conversation about your advancement is an opportunity to refuse to be reduced by the circumstances designed to limit you. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. This is Shay Blackman, and today's episode is rooted in Maya Angelou's powerful truth. You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. And when it comes to your career advancement, that's precisely what happens in negotiations. You control more than you think. Before we talk about how to negotiate, we need to understand what you're actually negotiating against. Because negotiation isn't just a conversation, it's a conversation happening within a system designed with inherent biases. The statistics are stark. Black women receive significantly lower initial offers than our white male counterparts doing the same work. And when we do negotiate, we face what researchers call the double bind. It's this impossible position where advocating for yourself is penalized, but accepting undervaluation compounds the problem. Let me paint a picture. You've just crushed a major project. Your metrics are solid, your leadership is sound. Your manager sits down with you for your negotiation conversation and presents an offer that's lower than you expected. Maybe you know internally that you're worth more, but you're also thinking about being perceived as too demanding or not grateful. You're thinking about how this might affect your working relationship. You might even be thinking about statistics you've heard about Black women leaving corporate spaces at higher rates. So what do? Many of us accept the offer. And in that moment, you've just set the trajectory for your next negotiation and the next one after that. That's not on you. That's a system issue. But the solution is something you actually control: strategic preparation. In my book, Rise and Thrive, A Black Woman's Blueprint for Leadership Excellence, I talk about how negotiation is where your value proposition, that deeper understanding of what you bring, becomes your power. It's not about being nice. It's not about fitting into someone else's comfort zone. It's about making an undeniable case for your own advancement. The framework I'm going to share with you today is what I call the Power Preparation Framework. I developed this specifically for situations where the negotiating table isn't level. It accounts for the biases you'll face, the systemic challenges you're navigating, and the need to build an absolutely bulletproof case that makes it harder for anyone to dismiss your worth. Let's break down each element of the Power Framework. This isn't theory. This is what works in real corporate environments where Black women are doing exceptional work but are constantly undervalued. P. Position your value. This is your foundation. You need documentation that's so clear and specific that it becomes impossible to argue with. First, quantify everything. Not, I led a successful project. Say I reduced operational costs by 18% while simultaneously improving team retention by 12%. Numbers remove ambiguity. Numbers are harder to dismiss with unconscious bias. Second, gather testimonials and endorsements. And I don't mean vague compliments. You need specific feedback that speaks to your impact. An email from a peer saying, "You solved a problem we'd been sitting with for 6 months," is gold. Document it. Third, create a portfolio of your successful projects. What problems did you solve? What did the organization gain? What would have happened if you hadn't been there? This portfolio becomes your evidence. Fourth, compile industry benchmarks for your role. What are people with your title, experience, and accomplishments earning in your industry? Not just in your company, in your field. This is critical because it moves the conversation away from what we can afford to what the market actually values. And fifth, track your impact on organizational goals. How did your work ladder up to what the company cares about? If your company prioritizes retention and you improve team retention, that's directly connected to their bottom line. This positioning phase shouldn't start the week before your negotiation. It's an ongoing practice. Keep a running file. Every win, every testimonial, every industry data point goes into this file. When it's time to negotiate, you're not scrambling to remember what you did 6 months ago. You have it documented. Oh, outline your objectives. Too many people go into negotiations without clarity about what they actually want. That's a strategic mistake. You need 3 levels of clarity. First, your primary goal. What's the ideal outcome? Maybe it's a 15% raise. Maybe it's a promotion with specific title and responsibilities. Be clear. Second, secondary objectives. What else would make this negotiation feel like a win? Maybe it's professional development opportunities. Maybe it's the ability to lead a specific initiative. Maybe it's flexibility in your work arrangement. These secondary objectives are negotiation currency. If the primary goal hits resistance, you have alternatives that still represent advancement. Third, your walkaway point. What's the absolute minimum you'll accept before you start exploring other opportunities? This matters because it keeps you from making decisions in the moment that you'll regret. You've already decided in advance what's acceptable. That changes the dynamic. And fourth, trade-off options. What are you willing to negotiate on? Maybe you're flexible on timeline. Maybe you're willing to take on a stretch project in exchange for accelerated growth. Knowing your flexibility in advance means you're not caught off guard during the conversation. Finally, the long-term implications. How does this negotiation position you for what comes next? If you accept a lower raise but get a promotion to a visible leadership role, that might be the smart play for your 5-year trajectory. Think bigger than the immediate conversation. W. Widen your options. This is where most people narrow their thinking, and that's where they lose leverage. Negotiation doesn't have to be just about salary. In fact, for Black women especially, sometimes the most powerful negotiations expand beyond the paycheck. Professional development opportunities are valuable. If you can negotiate sponsored executive coaching, leadership programs, or certifications that increase your market value, that's an investment in your future. That's advancement. Flexible work arrangements can be worth significant money in quality of life. The ability to work from home 3 days a week or adjust your hours to accommodate caregiving responsibilities or set boundaries around weekend work, these have real value. Leadership visibility assignments matter. Getting placed on high-profile projects, speaking opportunities, or cross-functional initiatives increases your visibility and your network. For Black women who often have to work harder to be seen, this is strategic positioning. Title or responsibility upgrades matter differently. Maybe you don't get the full salary increase you wanted, but your title shifts to something that makes you more marketable externally. You're building your brand for your next opportunity. Additional resources or support is underrated. Maybe you get a dedicated resource to handle administrative work, freeing you up for strategic thinking. Maybe you get a junior person to develop, which counts as leadership development. These matter. The point is, come into negotiations thinking expansively. What combination of things would represent genuine advancement for where you want to go? That's your negotiating space. E. Establish your evidence. This is where your case becomes airtight. You need market research on compensation, not your gut feeling, not what you think you should make, actual data. Sites like Glassdoor, PayScale, LinkedIn salary data, and industry reports from your field. When you can say, Data from 3 independent sources shows the market range for this role in this location is X dollars to Y dollars. You've removed emotion from the conversation. It's now about facts. Internal equity comparisons matter if you know them. This is tricky because companies aren't always transparent about salaries. But if you have information about what similar roles earn, or if you've heard from peers, that's valuable context. The argument isn't, I deserve this because I feel like it. It's, I deserve this because people in comparable roles are earning this. Industry standards documentation is powerful. Professional associations, industry surveys, published salary guides, these become your reference points. You're not making an argument against your company, you're making an argument for alignment with market realities. Your performance review history is evidence. Compile the last 3 years of reviews. Look for language about your performance, your impact, your leadership qualities. These become quotes in your negotiation narrative. And finally, competitor offerings. If you've been recruited by other companies, or if you know what competing organizations are offering similar roles, that's data too. It doesn't have to be aggressive. I've been approached about similar roles in the market paying 20% higher is simply information that contexts your value. R. Rehearse your delivery. You've prepared everything. Now you need to practice how you show up. This matters because in high-stakes negotiations, especially for Black women navigating double-bind dynamics, how you show up is part of the message. If you're nervous, that gets interpreted as uncertainty about your value. If you're aggressive, that gets interpreted as the stereotype. Rehearsal is how you find your strategic middle ground. Role play with trusted advisors. This could be a mentor, a peer ally, or a coach. Go through your opening statement, your key points, your likely objections. Practice staying calm when someone says, "We just don't have the budget." Practice redirecting when someone questions your qualifications. Record and review your presentation. This is uncomfortable, but it's worth it. Listen to yourself. Are you apologizing unnecessarily? Are you framing things as questions when they should be statements? Are you starting sentences with, "I just want to," or "I was wondering if"? That language undermines your position. Rehearsal helps you catch it. Prepare responses to likely objections. You know what your organization is probably going to say. "We don't have the budget. This doesn't align with our pay scale. You haven't been here long enough." Don't go in surprised. Prepare responses that acknowledge their constraints while maintaining your position. I understand budget is tight. What we're discussing is market alignment, which affects retention and performance. How do we structure this over the next 2 quarters? You're problem solving, not demanding. Master your opening statement and closing arguments. Your opening sets the tone. Your closing is what they remember. Practice both until they feel natural and powerful. Let's address something that doesn't get said enough in professional spaces. The double bind for Black women in negotiations is real. Appear too assertive, ask directly for what you want, state your case with confidence, and you risk being labeled as aggressive, demanding, not a team player. Appear too accommodating, soften your position, emphasize how you're grateful for the opportunity, frame things in questions, and you undersell yourself and confirm biases that we're not comfortable advocating for our own advancement. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying it because naming it gives you power. When you understand the dynamic, you can navigate it strategically. The solution isn't to pretend the double bind doesn't exist. It's to use what I call the strategic balance approach. First, frame assertiveness as advocacy. You're not asking for more money for yourself. You're advocating for fair market alignment. You're not demanding a promotion. You're asking to invest in your development, which benefits the organization. The frame matters. This adjustment ensures I'm fairly compensated for my market value and keeps me engaged long term is completely different from "I deserve more money." Same ask, different frame. Second, use "we" language to create partnership. We've both benefited from this working relationship. How do we structure my advancement in a way that makes sense for both the organization and my career growth? You're not demanding, you're problem solving. You're inviting them to be your partner in your success. Third, acknowledge constraints while maintaining your position. I know budget cycles are challenging. Given that reality, how do we approach this negotiation? You're showing you understand the system while not letting the system reduce your worth. Fourth, lead with data, follow with impact. The market research shows this range. My contributions in Q4 resulted in these specific outcomes. Here's how we bridge any gap. You're giving them numbers first, which triggers the rational brain. Then you hit them with human impact. And fifth, prepare for pushback with responses that maintain your ground. If someone says, "We just can't do that right now," you have a prepared response. "I understand. What's the timeline that would work, and what milestones would make this possible?" You're not accepting no, you're accepting not now and building a pathway forward. This isn't about being nice, it's about being strategic. It's about knowing that how you navigate this negotiation affects not just your paycheck, but your trajectory, your peace of mind, and your power. I want to give you something concrete you can actually use. This isn't theory. This is a framework you can apply this week. Grab a document, a spreadsheet, whatever tool works for you. We're going to build your personal negotiation playbook. This becomes your reference for any negotiation conversation coming up. Section 1, your value inventory. List every significant contribution you've made in the past 12 to 18 months. Go deep. For each one, write down the problem you solved, the metrics that show the impact: money saved, time gained, quality improved, people retained. Who benefited from your work? How it connects to organizational priorities. This is your evidence file. If you don't have it, you can't communicate it. Spend 30 minutes this week building this section. Section 2, the negotiation scenario. Write out the specific negotiation you're preparing for. Maybe it's a promotion conversation. Maybe it's a raise negotiation. Maybe it's pushing back on a counteroffer. Be specific. What's your primary ask? What are your 3 secondary objectives? What's your walkaway point? What's the timeline? Section 3, market research. Document what you found: market salary data, internal equity information if you have it, competitor offers. Keep links or references so you can pull from this in your conversation. Section 4, likely objections and your responses. Brainstorm 3 to 5 things your organization might say. For each one, write a prepared response. Not confrontational, strategic. Common objection: we don't have the budget for that. Strategic response: I understand budget is tight. What we're talking about is market alignment. How do we structure this so it works within your budget constraints? Section 5, your opening and closing. Write out your opening statement. Not word-for-word scripts, that sounds robotic, but key talking points that get you started on the right footing. Write out your closing statement. What do you want them to remember? This negotiation playbook becomes your preparation tool. The goal isn't to memorize scripts. The goal is to be so prepared that you show up with confidence, and that confidence is contagious. When you believe in your value, it's harder for anyone else to dismiss it. The negotiation conversation is just the beginning. What matters next is what you do with the outcome. If you got what you asked for, document it, get it in writing, and then reset the timeline in your mind. Negotiations aren't one-time events for most people. You're building a trajectory. What does advancement look like 12 to 18 months from now? If you got part of what you asked for, that's still a win. Don't discount it. You moved the needle. You set a precedent. You showed you're willing to advocate for yourself. That changes the dynamic going forward. Document what you did get, celebrate it, and use it as a foundation for the next negotiation. If you didn't get what you asked for, this is the critical moment. You get to decide what that means. Does it mean your organization doesn't value you fairly? Maybe. Does it mean you start actively exploring external opportunities? That's for you to decide based on the full context. But don't just accept it and move on. Have a follow-up conversation about the pathway forward. I understand we couldn't make the full adjustment right now. What specific milestones would trigger reconsideration in 3 or 6 months? In every scenario, you're refusing to be reduced. You're treating your negotiation as an ongoing conversation about your worth, not a single conversation that determines your entire future. Here's what I want to leave you with today. Negotiation for Black women in corporate spaces is inherently complex. The systems aren't designed with us in mind. The playing field isn't level. We navigate biases that others don't even have to think about. But here's the truth. Your complexity is your power. Your preparation is your shield. Your willingness to advocate for yourself is revolutionary because it challenges the systems designed to diminish you. The power preparation framework isn't complicated, but it requires intention. Position your value, outline your objectives, widen your options, establish your evidence, rehearse your delivery. That's it. When you do that work, you show up differently, you speak differently, you negotiate differently. Because you're not walking in hoping they'll see your worth, you're walking in knowing your worth and inviting them to acknowledge it. And when you refuse to be reduced by the events around you, when you take control of what you can control, you're not just advancing your own career, you're changing the narrative for every Black woman watching what's possible. The negotiation playbook I walked you through, that's your starting point. Build it this week, not next month, this week. Because every day you're not prepared is a day you're negotiating from a position of weakness instead of strength. I want to hear what negotiation challenge you're facing. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's your biggest concern about negotiating in your organization? Is it the double bind? Is it gathering evidence? Is it knowing your worth? Let's build community around this. Your question might become next week's deep dive. This is what the Rise and Thrive series is all about. We're not just talking about leadership theory. We're building a toolkit for Black women to navigate corporate spaces with strategy, with authenticity, and with unshakable clarity about our own value. If this resonated, grab the free Shield Resilient Strategy Guide, because negotiation confidence starts with knowing yourself deeply. Get the Rise and Thrive book if you want to go deeper on all 10 chapters of Black women's leadership. And if you're ready to take this to the next level, we're building something special in the Black Women's Leadership Academy that I'll be launching soon. You're stronger than you think. You're worth more than you've been offered, and you deserve to negotiate from a position of power. I'm Shay Blackman, and I'll see you next Wednesday with the next chapter in this journey. Until then, rise, thrive, transform.